I'm the radio collection developer, which kind of encompasses two roles. One is the historic collection of material, so things like old tapes, old cassettes, CDs, a whole variety of formats like, say, mini discs and things that haven't been produced for years and years and years. And the second part of my job is the acquisition of contemporary radio. So whatever's being broadcast on the radio at the moment, we want to take a kind of slice of that to give examples of what people were listening to, what people were talking about, the voices that were heard, the kind of adverts that were played, the music that was heard, and a whole range of different types of radio. I think for a lot of people, they get really anxious and concerned about, well, when they go, what are they going to, how are their memories going to be protected? And I think that's where an archive comes in, because an archive is all about preserving and maintaining those memories. We keep memories for the community so that people can hear their ancestors in 100 years' time. So the archive is built on this idea that we lovingly cherish these taonga, and that we will do everything to protect them and also make them accessible. There's no point in having material that you can't then have seen or heard by people in the future. So I think once material comes in, we accession it, so we give it a number, we describe it, we make sure that it's in a good state, because sometimes material comes in and it's got mould on and it's got dust and it's all kind of grimy. We basically need to kind of slow down the process of degradation. You can't stop things slowly falling apart. I mean, that's just what happens with everything. But what we can do is preserve it in terms of taking the content off the original carrier. So the original carrier being a tape or a cassette, we take that material, we make it into a digital file, so the voices and the music and the sounds remain, and then we look after the original as well. So we don't want to get rid of the original. That's just as important, because maybe in the future they might have better processes for extracting the material. And also around, say, that tape, there is a box, and in that box there might be documentation, so there might be scripts, there might be writing on the tape box, there's a whole range of things, there might be photographs, and so we want to keep that material as well. So we bring it into the collections and then we care for it in climate controlled vaults. We preserve it by making digital copies of the content so that people can access it in the future, and then it moves into the whole access part, which years from now people will be able to call up the catalogue, see that their granddad or grandma is talking about something 60 years ago, and then they have that instant connection. It's an amazing connection when you hear the voice of somebody that's gone, and you just go right back to that time. Even if you've never heard them before, often there are tones in the voice that carry through the family. So your granddad might say something, and then you hear your dad say it, and then you hear yourself say it, and you think, gosh, things do travel over time. We get a range of depositors, from individual broadcasters that have had a career in broadcasting, that have kept lots of tapes and then they want to deposit them with an archive, mainly so that things aren't lost, so that we have a collective memory of how we were. So we have broadcasters depositing, we have people recording material off radio, so they sit at home and they might have used a cassette and recorded programs that they've really enjoyed or have been really significant, or somebody has been a family member that has been interviewed on radio that they've recorded. So we often get people calling up saying, well, I recorded Uncle Jim 30 years ago, would you like that? Other kinds of depositors, we've had people where they, way back in the 1940s and 50s, where there were recording studios that allowed you to go and make your own records. So people would go and they would create their own record, and it would be a unique item. It would be the only version of that recording, and so they've held on to it in the family for 30, 40 years, and now want to deposit it into a safe place. So we get those kind of one-off things. And we also get kind of institutional deposits, so like broadcasters. So we have things like Radio New Zealand, who is a big depositor of material, and as a broadcaster they deposit quite a lot of material that they've collected over the years. In fact, the Sound Archive came out of Radio New Zealand. Now we take Radio New Zealand National 24/7, 365 days a year, and that was, I guess we chose to do that because there is so much important content. It is the national broadcaster, and they often have really strong interviews with really significant New Zealanders. And so that's one of our mandates in our collection policy, is to actually collect material that is really significant New Zealanders, significant New Zealand events, or events internationally that will shape New Zealand in some way. So Radio New Zealand plays a huge part in that. Taking it 24/7 also allows us to go, okay, we've got that, let's go and search for some of the smaller stations and some of the voices that may not be in the archive. It's not only public radio, we also do things like commercial radio, so we'd like commercial music stations, we do student radio, we do community access stations, so there are 12 community access stations up and down the country, and they are very good in terms of providing first-hand accounts of voices that you wouldn't necessarily hear in mainstream. We have low power FM, which are even smaller stations, and they only broadcast to a very small geographic kind of area. We take things from Parliament. We take things off the internet. So there are a lot of stations now that are not only broadcasting on the radio but also streaming on the internet. And it's not only about streaming the music or the talk, it's also about, they do a lot of moving image material, so like video material. And so we're kind of moving into that area now where we still want to get a representation of radio, but radio is actually morphing into these other types of media.